Devin? What are you doing here?
My name is Devin Scillian. I am 66 years old and recently retired. Helen and I have been married 42 years.
Don't dilly-dally.
Lately, I find myself asking the same question. Who is this old woman who lives in my house?
You asked it around your question around my face. It's gone.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now?
Hey kids, it's your old pal, ML Eldrick, back with another episode of The Soul of Detroit. Shawn is not with us. We think that he's probably having his hands sanitized, at least we hope so. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to apologize in advance if you go back and listen to our most recent episode. But Marc is here, and I'm joined by another legendary former Channel 4 icon.
Wait a sec. Another legendary. Well, that means you're implying that you're legendary.
Not implying. I thought it was obvious. It was my tenure at Channel 4 was legendary for its brevity and for its failure to make any mark whatsoever on the local media scene. So
fair enough.
It's like the Guinness Book. You got the tallest guy, you got the shortest guy, right? I mean, I'm nobody, and we got Yao Ming. So Devin Scillian, also a very good basketball player for what it's worth, is here just before he finally finishes his lifelong quest to take down Mandy Patinkin. Remember last time he was on the show, he opened up and expressed some actually kind of very frightening longings for trying to usurp the star on the Hollywood Boulevard that Mandy has, that he said he thought should be his when they were both at KU. So.
We were not there at the same time.
Oh, you weren't? Okay.
It's bad enough Jack Nicholson just made me 66. I'm aging fast enough without adding years.
So you're more worried about your age than that we implied that you're with an old woman. I hope
that was pretty funny.
Did you get that, Mrs. Scillian? Are you listening? We could use the download.
Corey, we kid.
Yeah, of course. A very sophisticated and elegant woman who married down to a guy who did pretty well nevertheless. So, Devin, it's great to have you here. You're settling into retirement, and while my bid to replace you as lead anchor at Channel 4 failed, you seem to be doing very successful in your bid to replace me as a columnist at the Detroit Free Press. So thanks for that, pal.
I don't think I want your gig because, writing constantly and the demands, the furnace is always needing coal shoveled into it, isn't it?
You know what? I look at it this way. There's more of them than there are of us. So there will never be as many reporters as there are good stories. So the hard part is trying to figure out which ones are you going to zero in on. Yeah. And because they take some time, the second hardest part is to get halfway there and not be distracted by something else that looks really good and say, oh, I'll get back to this and go to that, because it's like the dog that sees his reflection and wants to grab the bone in the water and ends up with no bones. And I'm a one-bone dog on my best day. So
that's what she said. But I think that the thing that it's funny because Nancy Kaffer, editorial page editor at the Free Press, has been talking to me for some time about writing a piece. I have been a little bit astonished by the reaction to it. I didn't feel like I was writing anything the least bit controversial. I mean, I obviously thought it was important, or I wouldn't have written it. But it's just been, it's been funny some of the reaction that I've had, and people, I was WJR wanting me out to talk with them on the radio. It's just lots of comments online, almost all of them overwhelmingly positive, but a few people who are clearly never going to, listen or read anything I write or watch anything that I do. People that were furious. But I to be honest, ML, I didn't find it at all a very brave. I got a text from a friend going, such a brave column. I didn't think it was particularly courageous.
Well, before we tell you what Devin wrote, we're going to tell you who brought us here today. That's Luke Nowacki and Pinnacle Wealth Strategies. They'll tell you how to have a more secure future so you can retire at a relatively young age like Mr. Scillian, and like maybe someday I'll get to it. Unless the newspaper closes, in which case I'll be gone sooner. And then the Cadger Cafe, where you can see us on St. Patrick's Day. It's always a great time for good food, good music, and just a great place to hang out. We'll tell you what's going on at the Cadger this week later on in the show. And of course, you, our Patreon subscribers, if you're one of our soulmates, you're watching this show right now, you're avoiding the insertion ads, and you are making it possible for us to come back every week with great guests like Devin Scillian. And Devin wrote about Donald Trump and how it's time to stand up, and for the people who support Trump to basically be heard. And when I say heard, when I read your column, when I teach my students, I talk about conversational writing and having voice, so that if someone read what you wrote without your byline on it and they knew you, they'd say, I know who wrote that. If you've ever watched Devin on the news or on Flashpoint and you've wondered who writes all that great stuff, Devin does, because when I read your column, I could hear your voice in my ear. It was written exactly the way I would expect you to say it, and it was it was kind of nice. It was like having my own private anchor man.
Well, that's good. Writing has always been my favorite part of what you and I do. It was really what kind of drew me to journalism, was the idea of writing the first draft of history. And I've told people over the years, everybody has their own sort of journalistic heroes. I don't know if you're a Jimmy Breslin guy or,
more of a Hunter S. Thompson.
Hunter S. Thompson, I can totally see that in you. And in the broadcast side, it was people, there were people who wanted to be Edward R. Murrow and all these, Walter Cronkite. For me, my journalism hero was always Homer. And when I say this to high school kids, they look at me
Simpson?
like... Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be the idiot.
Yeah. But no, I wanted to write the Iliad and the Odyssey. Wow. And I think there's a way to approach writing the times in which we live with a certain, kind of... narrative, literary, artistic flair, and so I've spent a lot of time trying to find my own voice, and I guess that's the only one I know how to write in.
This is an opinion piece, which is different than anchoring. You've done opinions before on Flashpoint. Is it harder to write opinions?
Well, I took pains, I thought, because I've always said that I really don't feel like I'm in the opinion business. Sunday mornings, with Flashpoint, which was a show that was about people's opinions, I never really tried to insert mine. I have strong opinions, Mike, you and I both know this, about transparency and about ethics and about journalism, no doubt about that. But it's funny, I even in this piece, I didn't find it particularly opinion-laden. I mean, to me, to say that there are certain things that Donald Trump's supporters should be willing to call him out on, I don't find that really out in left field anywhere. I think any of us who have someone who love us rely on that person to tell us when maybe we're wrong about something, or maybe we need to rethink something. And I only picked out 2 examples that I find, kind of egregious. And it's so funny. I must confess that there was some unintended brilliance in this column, if I may say so.
Well, I think there's some brilliance inherent in the column,
well,
but as you wish.
I didn't realize the people who complained to me about the column online were making my point.
Yeah, you're writing about them.
Here I was only pointing out 2 things that I take issue with, and for some people it was too many.
Well, and you also used examples of, and Devin's column talks about how there are some things that if you're all in, he talks about the genesis of that term, and that was a pretty interesting story. It goes back to an American admiral, but the thing is, you can't be 100% for anybody, and to illustrate his point, he goes to both ends of the political spectrum. He says, if you liked Reagan, there were some things you probably didn't like. If you liked Obama, there were some things you didn't like, and cited 2 examples. And I'm not going to deprive the free press of web traffic. You go look for it yourself. And we'll put a link to that column on our website. But that's true. And I think one of the reasons why a good friend is a good friend is they're the one who tells you your fly's down. It's also the reason why those good friends don't have many good friends, because most people would rather walk around with their joint hanging out than have somebody tell them, hey, pull it up, the kids are around. And the truth is, when you're talking about our nation and our security, I'm sure there are people who think that the FBI needs to be purged, that it's part of the deep state and it's part of lawfare and all that other stuff, and that chaos is good and churn is good, and that's great. But might I suggest to you that when the FBI was fully functioning and fully staffed, somebody in Minnesota said, hey, these guys don't want to know how to land a plane. Somebody should do something about it. And when they were at the height of their powers, they missed that. And that was not during a Democratic administration. That was during a Republican administration. And so when you fiddle with the bureaucracy, sometimes you tear things apart. And Dan Bongino, I don't feel like this is a subjective opinion, is not qualified to be second in command at the FBI. That's not because I believe that. It's because everybody who's been in that position has been a veteran law enforcement or FBI agent, the new Joint Chiefs of Staff. There are rules and requirements to be in that job that the new guy doesn't meet. These are not opinions. These are facts. And so you can love Trump or hate Trump, but there are some things that really, they just are. And what Devin was talking about is when these moments come up, if you truly care for this man and want him to succeed as president, you might want to put your hand up and say, boss, this one ain't going to go as well as you think.
Yeah.
And people don't seem to be willing to do that.
Yeah, it's funny. The 2 that I mentioned were the pardoning of the January 6th insurrectionists and the Trump crypto meme coin. Now, it's funny. I got a lot of the comments, and again, overwhelmingly positive, but those who took issue with it, many people mentioned the pardons. And no one mentioned or tried to defend the crypto, at least not that I've seen. I mean, I need to go dig through the comments, I'm sure. But no one has tried that. I mean, that's just a blatant violation of the Constitution. I mean, I know we talked about the emoluments clause, back about 8 years ago, and people have just sort of acted like it's nothing. Well, the problem with the crypto thing is not only and I'm one of the, maybe I'm just still a Neanderthal who thinks that crypto's a scam, but
it depends on what week it is with crypto.
Exactly right. But one problem that is absolutely inherent in it, if you're talking about giving money to someone in the political sphere, is it is untraceable. Now, that is the defining characteristic of crypto. Many people find
it's crypto, right?
Exactly.
Cryptic.
And many people find it the beauty of crypto, of course. But to not know who is buying this thing, who is spending millions of dollars, and the Trump family, I think it was Fortune.
Is that the Trump crime family that succeeded the Biden crime family?
Well, the Trump enterprise, let's say, made at least $100 million on transaction fees alone in this deal, and for us to not to not stop and say, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. That's not because who knows how, as I said in the piece, how many Russian rubles are in that. Went to buy that stuff.
Or the Chinese or the
Chinese
North Koreans, or the Canadians and the Mexicans saying, we don't want these tariffs. I mean, really, it's a portal for anybody to basically use it as a way to influence our policy.
And you and I have both, you far more than me, but how many times did I have you on Flashpoint to talk about the problem with ethics laws in Michigan? The transparency, when I used to have a friend who said that, the only rules that we should have when it comes to money and politics, 2 rules, because otherwise it's too easy to get around them. 2 rules: no cash, full transparency.
Yeah. Where was Governor Whitmer on Saturday during the Democratic state convention? A lot of people were there. I was there. We're wondering, where is she? Well, we find out that she was at the White House or she was talking to Trump, which I'm sure Democrats don't like. But if we had FOIA reform, which is the Freedom of Information Act, we could get her calendar and we could tell you where she was.
Yeah.
And this is a simple thing. This applies to Republicans and Democrats. And some of the people who are most outraged that in Michigan we don't apply the Freedom of Information Act to the governor and the legislature are conservative Republicans, partly because they're a little more conspiracy-minded than other folks, but mainly because they have questions. Public officials won't give them answers, but if you have the ability to find these public records, you can get the answers yourself. And it's just, you talk about how things change, and it used to be standard that presidential candidates of any party would disclose their income tax returns. Trump in 2016, this is not an attack on Trump, people, so just relax. That Trumpers claim to be really tough, but when you say anything about Trump, they turn into big babies. You are tough.
You're not allowed to criticize them.
You got all the guns, okay? So I don't want to cross you. Here's how this works. He said he wouldn't give his tax returns. And I will tell you, in 2022, 2024, because it just happened, I don't remember anybody talking about Trump or Kamala Harris's tax returns. In just 8 years, we got from this thing that used to be a very standard thing. No one thought twice about it. It was a good way for us to find out where the people who want to control the world got their money. And now in 8 short years, we're like, yeah, I don't whatever. I don't really know.
Isn't that the amazing thing about Trump is he doesn't care about what the standard was or what the rules were. I mean, he just will bulldoze everything, and then maybe we'll fix it later. And I think people like that about him. I think.
That is his knack and desire to break norms, to break plates. Is absolutely part of his attraction to many of the people who love. Of course, I get that, but that's what I mean.
And we should be challenging the status quo. I think all of us agree to that. But I think the point of Devin's column is, and you wrote it, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that there are some things that you do and some things we come to expect that you ignore, where even your friends should tell you, boy, really it would be nice to see those tax returns. It really would be nice if you just didn't tell people on Monday, get the hell out, without knowing whether they're the employee who doesn't do any work or they're the guy in the office who keeps things moving.
Well,
we don't know. It's
and this takes us to look at how many different things you've mentioned here in the last 5 minutes. And this is part of this rapid, what Steve Bannon refers to as muzzle velocity.
You mentioned Steve in there too, and that's an interesting character in the Trump universe because some days he's like the sensei and other days he's apostate.
Right.
If Shawn was here, he'd say he's at apostate. Somebody look that up.
Well, I would love. Wouldn't you love to see a Bannon Elon Musk showdown? Yeah, they're very fond of each other. But but yes,
who do you
fact
cheer
that
for? It's like me watching U of M play Ohio State. I'm like, can this end in a tie? And they both are banned. Mark's going to let that slide.
I want our guest to speak.
Jump in, Mark, if you're ready, if you need to there. But the fact that all of these things are coming so fast is also part of why. One of the things that I learned from the first Trump administration, never have one crisis. One will kill you. Have 50, and nobody can keep up. And that's largely, think about the way that Benghazi was attached to Hillary. And,
they lied, people died.
And yes,
3 hearings.
Yes. And Barack Obama. I mean, we're at the point where, Barack Obama's tan suit was a big deal there for a while. One thing can end up really damaging you. 50, it's harder for everybody and you've got so many people who one person's upset with this one, somebody else is upset with that one, so there's no massing of of public opinion. But the other thing is that, and this is important to me, and I probably should have made this clearer in the column. I don't know how much of this was directed necessarily at Trump voters as much as it was the Republicans on Capitol Hill.
Thank you.
Who I think are sort of walking away from their responsibilities as one of the checks and balances.
Well, that was the line you had in the article was instead of just rubber stamping, they're just going to be a doormat now. He can just do it. And in an odd way, I understand why, because that's their job and they don't want to lose their job and they know you oppose the king.
That's right. You're out. And we've seen it happen again and again. Peter Meyer would be a fine guest on this, right?
Love Peter.
Yeah. So, but I think that those, in fact, we're seeing some of it. We saw some Republicans step forward to say, look, Ukraine did not start the war with Russia. You saw some of that. Lindsey Graham did take issue with the January 6th pardons. So there's some of it.
Toothless.
But
they're toothless.
It's kind of
Well, let me flip this on the other side. If Joe Biden's supporters and friends had truly been supporters and friends, they would have said, Joe, you can't go again.
Yeah.
That's where somebody needed to come to him and say, Joe, we need another candidate.
Well, they did. They should have done it earlier.
they did.
But here's the thing. This should have been done much sooner. But the difference that we've seen, and again, it's early days with Trump. It feels like Trump has been back in the White House for 100 years. And it sounds like he wants to stay for 100 years, despite the Constitution. But maybe Republicans are going to start speaking out. I mean, it took Nancy Pelosi, it took Chuck Schumer a while to say, Joe, your time is past. I think George Clooney got there before anybody else. But so maybe Scott Baio will tell Trump it's time to, lighten up a little bit, or Robert Davi or somebody. But so Republicans may find their voice on that. But it really is in the best interest of the country and their party to, when it comes time to tell somebody they have spinach on their teeth, you need to tell them. I had no idea Trump was eating this much kale.
This is really the genesis of the piece for me, is just this idea that I can't think of anyone in my life that I think is right all the time. Not my best friends, not Corey, who is my best friend. And I betray my best friends if I don't take issue with something that they're, aren't people relying on you to be, a voice of alternative thinking in their life, whatever it may be. But I've just never, and as I said in the article, I don't know who my favorite president is of my lifetime, but I maybe agreed with that person 75% of the time.
Right.
25% of the time, they pissed me off about something. And so that's really where this whole thing started. I've never had a hero who didn't let me down, except Nolan Ryan.
How did Nolan Ryan let you down?
That's what I mean. He never,
he never let you down.
He never let me down. Yeah.
I have a Nolan Ryan story, but I'll wait.
Of course. We don't have that much. We don't have 3 hours. But that's why I find it interesting about the
This is not going to let me down, is it?
No, in fact, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. That's why he's holding back.
dare,
All right,
yeah.
go ahead. Go with it. What is it?
A friend of
Quickly.
mine, we went to his surprise birthday party, and one of his friends was one of the top executives with the Texas Rangers, and they were playing the Red Sox. We were out at Fenway Park, and my friend said, well, the Rangers are in town. You got tickets to the game, but I think my friend could probably get you better tickets. So we're like, okay, we go to Fenway. We're in the second row. Next to the Rangers dugout. By the way, Josh Hamilton, anybody remember him? When you see this guy in person, he was almost as big as Aaron Judge, but wider. It was like watching Adonis come out and swing a toothbrush when he got his bat and he was warming up. So we're in the second row. We're like, this is fantastic. And then we get a message that says, I need you guys to move back a couple rows because my boss needs those seats. And it was Nolan Ryan had his grandson come and sit in our seats. So we moved back to row 4. But I'm like, wow, Nolan Ryan came to Boston, brought his grandson to watch the Red Sox. Like, Nolan Ryan's pretty cool.
Well, it makes me like.
By the way, he looked like he could still take the mound.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you remember him
unbelievable.
throwing out after he had retired, he threw out the first pitch at the All-Star game and just about knocked the catcher down.
I
mean,
think
it was
the
best first
Jugs
pitch
gun had him at 88 miles an hour. Yeah.
First pitch ever.
I like him even more that he made you move your seat. I think it's great.
No. His minion asked us. I think he was afraid for Nolan to say, "Who's in my grandson's seats?" But yeah, they were very low key, very regular type family. I'm like, this guy with load management and everything, and we got to do 5 innings. This guy was like the modern embodiment of Walter Johnson. He took the hill every turn. He threw 9 innings. He struck everybody out. It was smoke again. Anyway,
always lost by 1 or 2 runs.
Well, he was with Texas.
Always had seemed to have the worst run support of any really great pitcher. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, it's because his batters had to go up so fast because he'd plow the other guys down. They never got their breath. But no, but it is true. We have heroes, and the more we get that's why I don't cover sports or entertainment, because I love sports and I love entertainment. I don't want to know the people who are responsible.
Same thing. I've met some people who I really had great admiration for, and then they did kind of another guy who never let me down after I really got to know him, fortunately.
Bernie Smilovitz.
Okay. Al Kaline.
Oh.
But Paul Gross was a heartbreaker. You told me some Paul Gross stories.
Like, out of town.
What? I was like, that's why they call him Paul Gross? What a freak. But we'll talk about that later.
Well, you're
big Wolverine fan, that Paul Gross, by the way. That's the only bad story I know about Paul Gross.
The only bad thing about Paul for you. Okay.
Come on.
But I will tell you, if you play softball with him, he's a maniac.
Oh, he's a killer.
He
is
competitive.
So competitive.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the nicest human being you'd ever want to meet.
Wonderful. I love Paul.
Maybe next to Chuck Gatica.
There's something about weather guys, right?
Yeah.
Most of the weather people I've known over the years, just great people. Yeah.
Not real accurate, but very nice.
Wow.
They don't have to be.
No. If Devin and I were as accurate, and we've had Derek Kevra on here and told him that, if we were as accurate as he was, we'd last about a week. But they've explained to us why.
But you would be less accurate than he is, I think is his point.
If that's possible, it could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, but you and I are limited to, it looks like rain. That's pretty much it.
That's the
these
point.
Guys, these folks all know, although I will tell you a funny thing.
They say the models tell us it looks like rain. That's the only difference.
So over my career, I think I worked at, if you include some part-time stuff that in college, over my career, I worked at 7 different television stations. Not a one of them, this is a true story, not a one of them ever had a window in the weather office.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The next time you're thinking about a $250,000 radar system, how about a $180 window?
So Fox 2 used to have the weather office on the back of the building, looking out on the property. But I think the reason why is really because the weathermen know they get it wrong so often. Like, what if I miss the hurricane and I die? Yeah. They're like, all the rest of us can go, but think, I got that certification. I better, you can't. And they usually get it at Kansas State. I don't know how you feel about that, Devin. I think they have the big meteorology school, don't they? Or was it Wichita State?
Both, I believe.
That'd be a shocker.
Though that's really good. But I went to high school about, even though I went to KU, I went to high school about 15, 20 minutes from K-State.
Okay.
So I've never had the hatred for K-State that most Jayhawks do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Devin, it's a great column. We really encourage people to take a look at it. And please look at it from an objective viewpoint, because he's not attacking Donald Trump.
He's also not attacking you, the reader, because I did think that was interesting that you said it's more about these congressional Republicans who won't push back, because I do know somebody who saw it and read the opinion, and they're like, well, we're not, they voted for Trump. They're like, well, we're not all like that. I don't like that he did this, this, and this. And it's like, well, the point is the people that really could challenge him don't. Is that the main point?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that none of us is particularly well served by sycophantic plaudits 24 hours a day. I always said that when I was at Channel 4, I valued a well-written critical email or message or letter much more than a glowing complimentary, just sort of, you're just so wonderful. Those were very nice, but a well thought out, well argued criticism, I always found great value in. And a lot of times people were right.
Well, and you're so right on that. And maybe that was my favorite part of the column is I often find that people who like you, who, if you ask to review your work, you say, how am I doing? They just go, you're doing great. You're doing great. They're actually doing you a disservice, because they're kind of they're just dumping an empty platitude on you, but they're actually not taking the time to take a critical look at it and say, like, you're doing a great job, but what about this, or have you thought about that, or did you talk to those people, which is what will really help you, because particularly in our business, when you're doing things that you think are right, if you don't have somebody that says, what about this or what about that, after it's published or broadcast, somebody will bring those questions to you, and you wish to hell somebody had done it beforehand.
Yeah.
And those people who give you constructive criticism and sincere feedback, not trolls, not flamers, those folks do more to make you better and to help you grow than the people who just kind of blow you off and say, you're doing a great job, man. Now I got to get back to Candy Crush or whatever it is they're really doing.
By the same token, it's not particularly helpful to have somebody who only complains about you.
Well, then you tune them out, right?
I can't do much with that. And maybe some folks on the left need to appreciate that about their criticisms.
Oh. Well, that's the other thing is, you know, you want to tell people stuff and you're like, probably easier not to say anything because this could come back at me.
Yep.
Well, here's my metaphor, and I think you'll appreciate it, Ulrich. I love University of Michigan athletics. I even know that they do some incorrect things at times, believe it or not. And I don't care for
only when they're awake.
I don't care for your university, but I can admit that Izzo's a good coach. Like nothing is absolute. We live in this world of it's just X or Y or 1 or 0. It's just a world of absolutism now.
That's a really, in fact, that's one of the dangers of the modern media world that we live in. Nobody should be living on a diet of one, news outlet, or everybody needs. Remember the old food pyramid? You need this well-rounded.
Has
plate.
that changed since Trump's been in power? I think it might have.
Yeah, everybody's diet should be composed of information coming from many different places. Otherwise, if you're living in an echo chamber, you're not doing yourself any favors. Yeah. It's not healthy.
How much of a role do you think the end of and I'm going to get the name of it wrong, the fair play law was that Reagan got rid of, that said if you have one side on, you have to have the other side, where you have to have point counterpoint almost. That's gone. Do you think that's allowed for the MSNBCs and the Fox?
Well, and for a long time in there, even after it went away, it was kind of self-imposed, right? And then Roger Ailes came along and said, look, we can't possibly hide our bias, so we're just going to tell you what it is from the outset. And I struggle
like a disclaimer.
Right. And I struggle
with that. A trigger
with
warning, if you will.
I struggle with that because I have spent my life trying to be what I refer to as an aggressive Switzerland. I think you absolutely can be a neutral journalist who simply describes what is without wandering off into opinion or slanted. And some people think that it's impossible. I don't think it is. I can say, my phone is on the table. My phone has a blue case. My phone is currently telling me it's 11:51. These are observations.
Corey hates the intro to this week's episode. It's all on that phone.
It's all right
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really lament the idea that so many people have decided. In fact, when CNN started to capitulate more to opinion, it was a really sad day for me because CNN to me was really this model of what round-the-clock journalism could be. Now, unfortunately, I used to always say, because people would say, well, the mainstream media is so biased in liberally, and I would say, well, if there's a bias in journalism, I think our bias is we're in favor of more news to cover. Yeah. And so we're constantly looking for, and sometimes that means stirring up trouble to cover for some people, unfortunately. But I really lament this idea that we have to capitulate to this world of opinionated journalism rather than just reporting what's going on. I know I'm preaching to the choir on that to you, Mike, but yeah, it's really not a great place to be.
Yeah, they have hired more former administration officials. There are more people who are very well paid to tell you what to think about the news than there are people to actually get the news. And I think that's where
it's a lot cheaper, isn't it? Than going out and finding the news. Yeah. It's
I don't know. I think when they have these shows with like 6 bloviators on it for an hour, boy, I'd like to see 6 reporters turning stories that could fill an hour of news,
Well, I agree. I completely agree. But news is expensive to cover. Yeah. And in fact, that's how we ended up being ambulance chasers. It was a lot easier to listen to a scanner and find news there than it was to pay somebody to go dig through
or hang out at the police precinct or look through the blotter and see where the big cases were. Yeah.
Dig into legislation that just got passed in the Capitol that nobody completely had read yet. That kind of thing.
It's hard.
The manpower. It's hard.
It's hard. It's easier to scream about stuff.
Well,
that's right.
Plus for TV, it's more visual and it's easier to show people. And I still remember one time being told to get ready for an 11 o'clock hit on Channel 4. And they're like, can you ask the cops to keep a police car on the scene? I'm like, why would I do that? That would tie up a police car. And if you could you sit in the front seat and have them put the lights on? I said, I'm not going to do any of that, because if there's a call for service in this community and they're like, that car is out of service because they're doing a live shot with this idiot who can't speak clearly, we're going to be very sorry. And they said, you're right about the idiot part. And then they said, talk to us when you get back. And TV does, you really can't say it unless you're going to show it. And that if it bleeds, it leads really does. But again, going back to the old Police Gazette, when there were no pictures even, we wanted the sensational stories. And, I would say shame on us, but really it's shame on all of us, because if you don't buy it, we won't try it.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
I used to say that all the time. If all of a sudden the McNeil Lehrer NewsHour had been the #1 news program in America, I'm telling you, within a week, every newscast in America would have looked a lot more like McNeil Lehrer.
Now,
but that's not what people wanted.
If it had been the McNeil Lehrer Pam Anderson newscast, that might have helped a little bit during the pledge drives. But do you remember early on in my, and again, this is, one of maybe like 8 days I was at Channel 4, but we had a meeting with the consultants who said, we've surveyed the staff about what you feel we need to put on the news and what you feel the right mix was. And you feel like, you as a staff feel like there's too much crime news. And everybody's like, yeah, that's what we've been talking about, yeah. And I'd only been there for like a week, so I'm like, I guess that's what they've been talking about. I said, well, here's what your viewers said. They want more crime news. And so we're going to do more crime news. And Channel 4 has been a rating monster for a long time now, partly because of Devin Scillian and certainly Mort Krim and Carmen Harlan and the people who have come before, during, and since. But this is what people want, and so we give it to you. So believe me, if you would eat a kale milkshake, McDonald's would have one instead of a Shamrock Shake in March. But you want the peppermint, not the kale.
Well, you're getting close to the marrow of my bones here, because yes, absolutely, we have to respond to the way that people need to take in information. But I also have never been, and this sounds very arrogant and haughty, but I've never thought that journalism worked very well as a customer service business. I want to rely on a journalist to tell me what I need to know, not what I want to know.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was we went off and somewhere decided, if we just ask the viewers what they want. And when I was in journalism school, I was taught that journalism was the art of going out and finding the things that were important and then making them interesting. Once we started asking people what they wanted to see, we started to get it backwards. We were going out and finding crap that was interesting and trying to make it seem important. And the stakes are too high for us to do that. And people want to say to me, well, journalism's a business. Yes, but it is the only business mentioned by name in the Constitution. It is more than a customer service industry. And we betray not just our viewers, but the whole concept of what this country's about if we capitulate to that.
Do you think it's going to get worse, or is it going to get better because of sites like, YouTube and Twitter, where those customers can go see everything and anything they ever want? Is there going to be a media company who can survive by saying, no, we're going to do it the other way. We're going to tell you what you need to know?
I'm starting to see some hopeful signs. I always wanted to believe that citizen journalism could work really well, and I think in some ways it does. Yeah. But it also can be very sloppy and haphazard, and people who don't necessarily know the rules that I was taught in my ethics of journalism.
There's no
class.
Editorial process.
That's right.
Bosses,
that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think there's some hopeful signs out there. I'll say in full transparency, I'm on the board of the Center for Michigan. But like what Bridge Michigan and Bridge Detroit are doing, I think are really, really hopeful. And, it's a nonprofit model that is being finding foundations that believe that a citizenry has to be informed, and they have to be informed in a non-biased, aggressively neutral way. And so I think that we're starting to see some hopeful signs somewhere. But yes, I'm very worried.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, on the other hand, I think, God, how in the world is Detroit still a town that has 2 newspapers?
For now.
For now. But how have we made it this long?
Yeah.
I mean, there aren't 2 newspaper towns left in America. In fact, there's some towns that barely have 1. Many that without 1.
News deserts is a real problem.
Totally.
Well, I mean, some people would say that's because one is coming from the left and one is coming from the right, and that's how they view the papers, and maybe that's the only way they survive.
It's interesting. In fact, Mike, I've never asked you this. Is it important, do you think, for a newspaper to have an editorial stance that is either left or right? Because that's what we have largely. We have Wall Street Journal, which for so long leaned right, and we have the New York Times, which so long has leaned left. Is it important for that?
No, I don't think so. And when I've applied as a very dark horse candidate to be executive editor of the Free Press, part of my plan was always eliminate the editorial page. And I think that we've gotten to a place, largely because of cable news, where people can't make the distinction between the opinion page and the news pages. Now,
it used to be, it was easy.
Yeah.
You opened up the paper and you knew that everything that was on page 5 or page 6, whatever, that was all opinion. And now online, it's all garbled together.
Oh, yeah. Well,
it's a real problem.
I had one of the governor's spokespeople, who should be a fairly sophisticated part of our media culture, tell me in November, December, we don't really understand what you do there. We don't understand what part of the paper you work for. Aren't you an editorial writer? I'm like, no, I'm a columnist and I write news and analysis, but it's not opinion. The opinion might be, in the last 20 years, I haven't seen anything this crazy, but that's not really opinion. It's commenting on something factual.
That's the blurriest of lines, though.
But that's the problem is I don't think we need it anymore. And when the Free Press stopped doing endorsements in the national elections, I was quoted in Deadline Detroit as basically saying we should have got out of the endorsement game a long time ago. Nancy Caffer disagrees with me. My boss disagreed with me. They weren't really happy I was in Deadline Detroit. But I said a journalist speaks and answers questions just as we expect other people to do, and that's how I feel. What I do think newspapers should do, just as this show does by sharing all of your feedback, is we should be a public square where people like Devin Scillian have something to add. And if there's someone who completely and utterly agrees with Devin Scillian, then they can submit their op-ed and we'll run that too. So I think we should be a place that provides a platform for voices, but I think people don't need us to tell them what to do anymore. And I'll tell you the other thing about this, and I know we're running long here, is if I tell you something based on my factual reporting and you disagree with me, you are going to trust me less. And if I tell you to feel a certain way and you don't feel that way, enough times you're going to abandon me and you're not going to get the benefit of my objective reporting that may help you form an opinion that is useful and helpful. So I think we need to get out of that. The other thing is when we do endorsements, we don't have the staff to properly vet candidates anymore. So when we tell you somebody is trustworthy, we really just don't know. And as someone who dug into Kwame Kilpatrick more than anybody in 2001, who voted for him in 2001 and was fully confident that he would be the best mayor of my lifetime, we get this shit wrong all the time. So we should not be telling you how to think, how to vote, how to feel, but we should have people who have well-formed and well-stated opinions like your column be published in our paper so that people can be exposed to that and that can make them think.
Good take. Yeah, I can.
And opposing viewpoints, particularly from Nancy Caffer, will be welcomed on the show because I know she disagrees 1,000%.
Well, I mean, I can see in places, for instance, like judge races. people head to the polls and they're trying to figure out who to vote for in these judge races. And I think very few people are fully equipped, unless you're an attorney and you've appeared before them, or if you've been a defendant or a plaintiff, that can be a different kind of thing. But those are places where a paper, I think, can really help, somebody. Voting for president, the higher class races, the higher up the ticket, I would probably agree with you.
That's funny you say that, because every election or major election, I go to the Woodward Talk, which is the paper for everything along Woodward.
Yeah.
Berkeley, where I live, Royal Oak, Ferndale.
Right. Yep.
And the thing I like about it is they have every candidate on there, because all politics is local. And I have no idea who these people are or what they stand for. And they just have a basic, here's a couple questions. What's your answer? And I swear to God, if there's someone on there who doesn't reply, they're immediately out. Like that's my bar. But I appreciate that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But you're right. I don't need them telling me about president or even senators. Or
But
governors.
think about endorsing judges. There are Supreme Court justices
Well, maybe not
who were
endorsements.
carefully vetted by the best minds in Washington, who once they got on the Supreme Court, the president that appointed them said, holy shit, not what I was expecting. And now you're expecting newspapers with our diminished staff to predict who's going to be a good jurist. It's virtually impossible. The best thing I've seen is when I lived in Chicago, which again is a big city, there were maybe a dozen different bar associations, the Irish Catholic lawyers, the Puerto Rican lawyers, the black lawyers, the, whatever, all these different lawyers. And what they would do is they would rate the candidates. And you could get these ratings, and if you took these 10, 12 bar associations and you looked at the judicial candidate and said, well, all of them from their different perspectives and the cultural, political, religious map think this guy would be a good judge or this woman would be a good judge, then you could probably vote for them. But that requires a lot of work, and we just don't have that many groups with knowledge of these people saying, yeah, we think O'Shaughnessy would be okay. And guess who thinks so too? Rodriguez, and it's just, it's hard.
I think that the where we've gotten on judges, though, is to me the best example of how toxically striated we've become. Can you imagine Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she was confirmed, received 98, I believe it was, votes for confirmation. Reliably liberal voice, but she was qualified.
Yeah.
Eminently qualified. And you had a whole bunch of Republicans and conservatives vote for her confirmation. Can you imagine anybody in this day and age getting even 65 votes to be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice?
Merrick Garland was judicial oatmeal, and he couldn't even get a hearing, let alone a vote.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
Democrats
not
voted
great.
for Clarence Thomas. Okay. I mean, come on. Right. They voted for Samuel Alito. They voted for William Rehnquist. They voted for, I think, for Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. He probably got a couple Democratic votes. So, yeah, no, it's a mess. But Devin, we know you've got to go to some of those minor league media organizations like WJR. I guess they got like a Golden Tower or something like that. I mean, nice building. What else you guys got going on over there?
You want my favorite fun fact about what's happening in Detroit right now? We all know the Fisher Building. Beautiful, magnificent, towering. The plan that Henry Ford Health System has right now for its new campus right down Grand is going to be taller than the Fisher Building.
Really?
Yep.
How about that?
Isn't that crazy?
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here, Mike.
Well, and plus it's warm and you're out of a job and your wife's really mad at you because you said something about hanging out with an old lady in your bed. And
Eminem hasn't called you lately for another gig?
Yeah. So
Marshall, I'm sorry. Marshall.
To friends.
I'm still a fan, so it's Eminem.
Oh, it's
But,
well, when you're with him, it's kind of weird to call him
It is
Eminem.
fair
I
enough.
mean, so yeah.
Mr. Mathers.
Yeah.
do you call him Marsh? Or do you go with Marshall?
I go with Marshall.
Okay. Not Kid? Yeah, good job with that rhyming, kid. And you know, come get your Grammy. Before you go, obviously, you're writing children's books, probably more to come. You're a musician. Any gigs coming up we can tell people about?
We are just now starting to book out our summer schedule, so watch for us. You know, we kind of do the summer circuit with the
A lot of bar mitzvahs, graduations, debutante balls.
We have never done a wedding or a bar mitzvah.
Okay.
No, we haven't done that yet.
We're still living off of that Channel 4 buyout money. Pretty soon, you'll be doing street corners. You'll be busking on the people mover.
You know, I've always thought that I think it'd be really fun to go take a guitar and go to Europe and just see what happens. Just play on the street. Just do the busker thing.
You would have to do that because, and again, very few people knew who I was at Michigan State, but we decided one time we were going to busk by the administration building on the Red Cedar River.
Yeah.
My friend went out there with his acoustic. I went out there with my saxophone. And we started to play a couple tunes, and people come and say, "Hey, what you doing, man?" Who you knew, and they'd want to touch. Like, I'm playing this. So you could not do that here. You would have to go somewhere to Europe, where Mandy Patinkin would walk by and be like, "Still chasing the dream, eh?"
Well, I would try to get him to sing. You know, I'll play, you sing. But what I've always remembered,
no threat there. He's not very talented.
He's just a hack.
Yeah, right.
I remember I was a teenager in Paris, the first time I ever went to Paris, and I'm walking through the subway, and there is a guy playing a 12-string guitar, singing "Nights in White Satin," and it is ringing through the subway. And I just thought it's still one of the best music performances. I mean, I didn't pay for it. I wasn't sitting like in a huge arena. I wasn't at the Sphere in Vegas. It was one of the greatest music performances of my life. So I think going and busking for a few weeks sounds like a pretty good deal.
Well, let me know if you need a sax accompaniment. Because,
that rare sax guitar combo. You don't see enough of that.
Oh boy, I'll tell you what, and that's the world's loss.
If someone wants to see you play, like, how do we find out? Are you active on Facebook? Is it Twitter? Like,
DevinScillian.com usually has a listing of the shows on it. Yeah.
Do you not do social media at all?
No, I do.
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
All right.
We could be the not so local too. Just think about it. Just think about it.
Not so local too.
You don't need to think long about it.
Yeah. Devin's like, I'm thinking I stayed too long. But well, hey, Devin, it's great to have you here. We hope you'll be back. And if you ever want to guest host, let me know. These guys would love to have somebody who knows what they're doing behind the mic.
Well, I finally made it into the basement, so it's pretty great. Great.
It's all up from here.
I love it. Thanks for having me. And you know, I will sit down and go anywhere to talk journalism. So, and you're one of my favorite people to talk that with. So you and I are very.
I've never heard that in this basement before, so you're welcome. You're welcome anytime.
You have to book out a week.
Yeah, in fact, lock the door. Don't let him out. Devin Scillian, folks, you can catch him online. You can catch him in the Free Press and catch him at a venue near you. So, Devin, thanks very much, and apologies to Corey.
Yeah, I will tell her, but it was Jack Nicholson. It wasn't me. I had nothing to do with it.
Hey, Marc, it was great that Devin's here, and obviously he's pretty much all set for the future. But the rest of us have got to get a plan. And if you're relying on your own financial expertise, I'm pretty good with money, but the last thing I would want to do is only trust my own judgment. So we turn to people like Luke Nowacki and Pinnacle Wealth Strategy because it's not often that we're treated to nuggets of financial wisdom from none other than the great AB. For instance, in this world, money can be divided into categories of be mine or not be mine. And if you listen to the Drew Lane Show, you know who AB is. It can be greatly disappointing when someone has need for money that they thought be mine, only to find out that it not be mine. Call or text Luke Nowacki at 248-663. I see what Luke's doing there. 4748 to find more about the super secret money category of be mine with Grouf. Did I say that right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. You know who does know how to say it right? That's Luke. And when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. member FINRA SIPC.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
Shawn is not with us this week. He's on assignment. And as a tribute to Shawn, because he hates Geek of the Week, I came here and I said, you know what? To honor my friend, I am not going to do Geek of the Week. In fact, we are not going to have it part of the show this week. And Marc said, "Not so fast, little buckaroo."
Well, it's so I have a nomination because I signed up.
Can I ask a question, Marc? Who's your nomination?
The way our beloved Shawn works a mic is very
phallic.
Yeah. But no, so I signed up for text messages from a person a long time ago. And let's see, the last one I got was yesterday in the morning. Before that, October 16th. Before that, September 24th. And the text that I signed up for are updates on the Fire Festival, Billy McFarland. Does everybody remember the Fire Festival? The event that this guy put on that was a complete hoax and scam, and people lost thousands of dollars. They got stranded there with their cheese sandwiches that they had to eat.
Yeah,
no lodging.
This is the Fire Festival 2.0, right?
Fire Festival 2 has launched, and that's why Billy McFarland is I think our Geek of the Week, because they've launched this. They have a location. It's off of Cancun in Mexico, and it's an island with resorts, and you can buy tickets already where they cost anywhere between $1,400 and I think $2 million.
That's before the tariff.
Yeah, and it's the funny thing is Billy McFarland can't go. He's not allowed to travel outside of the country. It's part of his probation right now. But what I find really interesting is that when you read the whole press release that they sent out May 30th to June 2nd, Playa Fire Festival 2, it's real. No mention of who's going to be there. No artists. It's supposed to be this big concert that you go to. No artists have been named. McFarland's like, well, maybe they won't just be musical artists. Maybe there'll be a skateboarder who will put on a presentation. Which
we'd have some jugglers, feats of strength.
No one wants to see that stuff. So Billy McFarland, I think, is a very appropriate Geek of the Week. So we can reinstitute it.
Well, Marc, I think you've persuaded me, but I would say, if you're going to Fire Festival 2 and shelling out $1,400, but don't realize that there never really was a Fire Festival 1, and you're plunking down money for one of those tickets, you are my Geek of the Week.
See you again.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. Got the time.
You know, every time we start room 7609 and I see the graphic that our friend Matt put together and I see his maniacal face staring back at us, I say, Matty Jennings, I hope you're doing well. This segment is brought to you by the Caju Cafe. And I wish Devin was able to stick around to weigh in on this selection, because he is a musician and a man who knows his way around the music business. But we have a great suggestion from one of our listeners. But first I have to tell you what's going on at the Caju Cafe. Tonight, Tuesday, February 25th, it's the Real Housewives of Detroit Trivia Night. On Wednesday, it's karaoke. Thursday, the Bill Meyer Group Trio. Friday, it's Funky Diesel. And then Super Crunch, which, as you know, is a Grateful Dead tribute group. Saturday, Rory Moon and Sancho Dance Pack. Sunday, the Swing Syndicate. So many acts, we don't have time to read them all. Check out the Caju Cafe website, because I guarantee you're going to see somebody performing on Sunday who you're going to love. Monday, it's Tasha Owens and the Stable Dudes Open Jam. And, of course, it's Muscle Madness, which is all you can eat mussels, because when you go to the Caju Cafe, there's lots of fun. There's lots of music, and there's lots of food. There's always a good time there, and you can find a link to their website on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. Well, our good friend Andrew Turnbull writes us, and if you remember, he was one of the folks who helped eulogize Honest John in the very first podcast wake ever, and he's got a great story for us about how he came to break up a party by putting on the Clash and their very singular single, Straight to Hell.
If you could play
about a British jig and reel, speaking King's English in quotation, as railhead towns feel the steel mills rust, water froze in the generation. Clear as winter ice, this is your paradise. There ain't no need for ya, there ain't no need for ya. Go straight to hell, boys. Go straight to hell, boys. Wanna join in a chorus of the Amerasian blues when it's Christmas out in Ho Chi Minh City. Kitties say, Papa, 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 Papa Sam, take me home. See me got photograph of you and Mama, Mama, Mama Sam. Of you and Mama, Mama, Mama Sam. Let me tell you about your blood bamboo kid. It ain't Coca-Cola, it's rice. Straight to hell, boy. Go straight to hell, boy. Go straight to hell, boy. Go straight to hell, boy. Oh, Papa Sam, please take me home. Oh, Papa Sam, everybody, they wanna go home. So Mama Sam says, wanna play mind crazed banjo on the druggy drag ragtime USA in Parkland International, hey, Junkiedom USA, where cocaine proves the purest rock man groove and rat poison. The volatile Molotov says, straight to hell. Can you cop it up loud and strong? The immigrants, they wanna sing all night long. It could be anywhere, most likely could be any frontier, any hemisphere. In no man's land, there ain't no asylum here. King Solomon, he never lived round here. Straight to hell, boy. Go straight to hell, boy. Go straight to hell, boys. Go straight to hell, boy. Oh, Papa Sam.
Andrew writes, ML. It was September 24th, 1983, and I was a sturdy freshman at Northwood Institute. On this day, I traveled to Kalamazoo to party with friends and watch Central Michigan dismantle Western Michigan at Waldo Stadium. We were heavily fortified with peppermint schnapps, and after the game, attended a house party that someone in our group suggested. The party was rocking to early 80s pop, and we knew no one there. I banged my way into the party and found the stereo and record collection. I plunked down my 250-pound frame. By the way, Andrew is very svelte now. This was back then. That's what happens to freshman 50. And started thumbing through records. I was delighted to find Combat Rock by The Clash. The screech of the needle coming off the Michael Jackson album wasn't enough to slow down the party. But when I dropped the needle on Straight to Hell, the party came to a screeching halt. I wonder why. Several questions were raised by the party hosts. Who the fuck are you? What the hell are you doing? The entire party was now glaring at us. With Joe Strummer still singing in the living room, we decided it might be best to exit. Out on the street, my host looked at me and said, Drew, you killed the party. I still swell with pride every time I hear Straight to Hell. Good times. Cheers. Andrew Turnbull.
Now, what's funny is I was telling you how that beginning part of that song has been used in a very popular song that if he would have put on MIA's Paper Planes, the party probably would have loved it. Although I don't think it had been made at that point.
Yeah, it would have required the hot tub time machine.
Yeah.
But boy, I love The Clash.
It's the
I
same,
love
my point
Mick
is
Jones.
It's the same beat.
But holy smokes, that is dirge-like. That would be a party killer unless everybody was doing mushrooms.
All right.
In which case, they'd be like, cool. So, Andrew, thanks for the song. Thanks for the story. And please keep your suggestions and your stories coming to room 7609. Otherwise, I'm going to take over and nobody wants that.
No. Please don't.
You can send those to us at mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. And here's the part where Mark cues up the super cool Max Prokop music bed, and we talk to and thank our new soulmates. And guess what?
What? There's none.
No. After a long hiatus, we have a new soulmate. Todd became a soulmate at the $5 a month level. We have many levels and many benefits, but the main thing is we want you to buy into the show. And for $5, you get quite a lot. You get to watch the show. You get to hear the show before anybody else. You get to listen to the show without any of those annoying insertion ads. And you get our monthly bonus episode. And we have a couple events coming up for our soulmates and, frankly, anybody else who wants to come out. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. That's a Monday. We will be broadcasting from the Caju Cafe. So we hope you can come and join us for that event. And August 1st, there will be an exclusive Soulmates event there. I mean, like a VIP event. We're going to have a night, Friday night, under the stars at the Caju Cafe with Max Prokop's King's English and Shasta Fox playing. We're going to have a lot of friends out there. Mark and Shawn and I will be there, or at least I will be there, and I think they'll be there. Hoping to get Erica Erickson out for that, and that's going to be a great night at the Caju with some great music, and we'll come up with some fun things to do between now and then, but there will be a VIP opportunity strictly for members of the Soulmates at probably any level. I want to give you a word about Erica, too. I know people feel like we've been teasing them, and that's what happens in TV. You tease somebody, and then you do the story. We thought Erica would be on nights by now and would be able to join us more often. She is stuck on days, doing a great job. I'm sure you've seen her there. We encourage you to watch Channel 4 and catch Erica. But she's going to be on days until further notice, so we're going to try and find a way to get her back onto the show. We haven't been playing games with you. We are doing our best, and she really, to my astonishment, misses being in a basement with three old dudes. That may say more about her than it does about us, but we love Erica. We miss her. We know she makes the show better, and we want her to be back here as soon as we can make that happen. So thank you for your patience. And if you don't want to become a soulmate, first of all, what's wrong with you? But second of all, you can make a one-time donation. Mark, how do people give us their money?
MLSoulofDetroit.com. Links all above the top for Venmo, PayPal. But Patreon, too. I mean, you get a lot more for your buck.
And you can buy individual episodes. You can pay to get one of our bonus episodes. Let's say you don't want a long-standing relationship with us. Maybe it's like a booty call.
You just want to see Devin.
Oh, we should have Devin back for a bonus episode. But yeah, you can catch those episodes. They post every month. They're free for soulmates, but if you want to just get one episode, you want to watch one, you want to listen to one, whatever, you can pay for them individually. So we got all kinds of ways to take your money in return for our high-quality content. And now we have your feedback. Mike, who listened to the Elephant Show, which is where we had one of the candidates for Michigan Republican Party chairman on. His name was Joe Sella. By the way, he was not elected party chairman. And Mark Ludwig and Al B.J. Williams, who were trying to be Democratic state party chairman, who were on a couple weeks earlier for the Donkey Show, were also not elected. So I don't know if there's a Soul of Detroit curse
we're 0 for 3.
here. Yeah, it's...
that it's Jim Rumsfeld for the Republicans. And
Jim Runstad.
Runstad, I'm sorry. Yeah. And Curtis Fertel
for the Democrats. And Jim Runstad was not endorsed by Donald Trump. Donald Trump endorsed me, Shawn Maddock. And
I got to say this, though.
Interesting.
Reading the Free Press article about it, I thought it was really a great quote from a guy who's like, Trump probably did 30 seconds of research on this, so I don't really have to go with what he said. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what Devin's column was about, right? I don't know if you saw that comment or not. It's like,
no.
Yeah, just because he endorsed this person, I'm going to do a little bit more research on who I think should vote and who I think should be the representative. I thought it was, it was nice to hear.
Yeah, but I think Trump does know me, Shawn Maddock. They've been to Mar-a-Lago. They've brought people to Washington on buses. She was one of the allegedly false electors here who tried to cast Michigan's Electoral College votes for Trump back in 2020 and was working very closely with the Trump campaign.
He might know her, but did he know the other candidates?
That's a fair question too. Yes, and I don't know the answer. But as you consider the soul curse, let me think about the Trump curse, because this is the second time Trump has endorsed a candidate for Michigan State Party chair who was not elected. So if you think we're a jinx, so is Donald Trump. And I think Donald Trump has a pretty good record of success. So we're in good company in the jinx business. Anyway, we asked Joe whether he thought the 2020 election was stolen, and he kind of danced around a little bit. Listener Mike says, a cloudy election. Typical response. He was not persuaded.
I thought it was kind of a weak response, too.
Well, it was the kind of response that you have to give these days if you want to stay on Donald Trump's good side, because Devin said, our friends tell us things we don't want to hear. Well, let me tell you something. If you're Donald Trump's friend, he does not want to hear that you think the 2020 election was legitimate. In fact,
and if you didn't hear it, his basic response was, well, there's no way Biden could have gotten that many votes, so something needs to be looked in on that side. It's like, well, okay. Well,
yeah, and probably shame on us for not saying, well, everybody looked in on it.
I know.
And nobody found anything, but we had a lot to get to.
You're not going to win that argument.
With Joe. No, and we just wanted to put him on the record. Yeah. By the way, one of the reasons why it's believed that Trump did not endorse, sorry, let me get that right. He did endorse a candidate for party chairman in 2020 who did say he thought the 2020 election was legitimate. So this is
all right.
Yeah, okay. It's kind of complicated. So let me bail myself up by saying, Mark, do you have any feedback?
Yeah, I do. Yes. Let's see here. This is from Dave.
Now, do like Shawn does and give Dave's full name, his home address.
His email address.
We call him Shawn Docs.
So he says, hey, ML, so many people have been calling out DEI in all its forms, one of the latest being Kid Rock, who in a totally shocking take, I think he's being facetious there, called out Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show as DEI gone mad. Now, Kendrick Lamar's not my kind of thing personally, but the guy's a huge following, streams very well, and just won some significant Grammys, but none of that matters to Kid Rock. My question is labeling something as DEI just the latest way for bigots and racists to spread their bigoted takes without being so overt? Aren't they reaching a conclusion that someone is unworthy of inclusion on a list or deserving of a job or candidacy or whatever based solely on their race, gender? In other words, is it the opposite now that none of them are qualified?
Boy, this whole label thing is really complicated. And we talk about cancel culture, right? And we don't like it. Obama doesn't like cancel culture. The Associated Press has been banned from the White House and on some of these presidential trips because they refuse to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America in their style book. And what I say to you, gentle listeners, isn't that a form of cancel culture too? Because you won't use the terminology somebody prefers. You are now depriving them of opportunities and canceling them. All of which is to say, the right has its games, the left has its games, but to me, who's in the middle, they look awfully similar. So I don't know. You talk about DEI is more about race. DEI is about gender. It's about religion. It's about so many things. But you know what? I just love everybody, Mark.
It's about opportunity, right?
Except for Shawn.
And that doesn't mean. Oh, I'm not going to go on with it. Okay. Anyway,
you're going to drag us into the quagmire. No,
Nope.
don't do that. Don't do that. Emily writes, Dear ML, I just finished your Sunday column. If you missed it, my Sunday column was about Solomon Kinloch Jr. He is the Reverend and leader of Triumph Church, which is a church that claims 40,000 members. He just announced on last Wednesday that he was running for mayor in an event at the Fox Theater, which drew 4,000 people. The most impressive mayoral kickoff I've ever seen. And he immediately made himself one of the favorites to become Detroit's next mayor. We'll see what happens between now and then. But I had an exclusive interview with Reverend Kinloch, which I'll have a link to that column on our website. And I talked about how many votes I think it's going to take to become one of the 2 finalists for mayor. You can check that out in the column too. Emily says, Dear ML, I just finished your Sunday column. On your next episode of Solar Detroit, and here we are, and maybe in a future column, without being specific, although it is all public record, can you discuss which neighborhoods the Detroit mayoral candidates reside in and if they're owners or renters? No city in the state has the wealth gap Detroit has, from the deepest slums where your neighbors live on the margins and may currently have several feet of flooded ice condemning their homes and totaling their cars, to swank Palmer Woods where your neighbors are the Secretary of State and other multimillionaire local elites. It's deeply revealing to know the Detroit neighborhood the candidates selected to invest in, put some roots in, and the lens these candidates see the city from day to day. And somewhat related, I generally have no idea, is Mary Sheffield married? Did Mary or any of the candidates have children? Do these children live in the city? Were or are they being educated in the city? Where I'm going with this is that it's also revealing to know the firsthand experiences, if any, the candidates have with Detroit K-12 public, and I suppose private and charter, schools. And frankly, in a city long plagued by nepotism and cronyism, I'd like to know what any spouses and adult children do for employments. Warm regards, Emily in Corktown. Holy crap. There's like 10 good story ideas in here. And I'm going to try and answer them as succinctly as possible, which, as you know, for me is not very possible or very succinct. But Solomon Kinloch, along with Todd Perkins, are 2 candidates who just moved to Detroit within the last year to qualify to run for mayor.
Where did they live before?
I'm told Reverend Kinloch had a very comfortable home in Oakland County. Todd Perkins lived in Grosse Pointe Shores, which, if you know Grosse Pointe Shores, that's the nicest of the Grosse Pointe. And so they could be considered somewhat carpetbaggers or opportunists. Mary Sheffield is single, unless she's gotten married since the last I heard, does not have any children. Most of these candidates do have children. Many of them have been educated outside the school or in private or Catholic schools if they go to school. I think Todd Perkins' kids may go to the University of Detroit Jesuit High School, where he also went to high school with, by the way, John Rutherford of the Cadre Cafe, a sponsor of our show. And the funny thing is, and get the bell ready, Mark, Kwame Kilpatrick was going to send his kids to the Catholic school where I send my kids, which is just across the street, literally across the street from Detroit, St. Clair Montefalco Catholic School. Great school, as Casey Kasem would have said at one time. And people were coming at him for sending his kids to a private school. And he said to me, I said, you know, Mr. Mayor, why don't you send them to the public school? He's like, I want my kids to get the best education. And at the time,
I'm sure that went over well.
Well, you know, it was kind of a fair comment, right? I mean, where you send your children to school is a very private issue. And if anything, it speaks more about the quality of the public schools than it does your quality as a parent. We want our kids to get the best education they can and that we can afford. But it is a very, very delicate issue. And the superintendent of Detroit schools, Nikolai Vitti, one of the first things he did when he moved back to this area, he's from Dearborn originally, I believe. When he moved back here from Florida to take over the Detroit public schools, he enrolled his children in the Detroit public schools, I think very fairly sending the message, if I want you to trust our schools with your children, I have to trust our schools with my children. I don't know if they still go there or not, but when he did that, I thought, wow, what a smart and appropriate move. But all of the things Emily says is absolutely right. There are very few of these mayoral and city council candidates who have a chance to win, who live someplace that isn't very nice. And before we had districts, which we've had now for about 3 or 4 elections, almost all of the candidates for city council and mayor lived on the west side in some of the nicer neighborhoods, Palmer Woods, Sherwood Forest, places like that. Great question, and this is one that I will be sharing with Dan Afana, our City Hall reporter, to see if we can dig a little deeper on this, because Emily is right. If you live in Indian Village, where there is private security and there are a couple private schools, you probably aren't too worried about police response time. You probably aren't too worried about a school that's falling down around the students. And your own perspective on the city is very much dictated by where you live. And there are very few mayoral candidates. The last one I can remember was Coleman Young, and I rode the bus with him. And before that, Freeman Hendricks in 2005, who rode the buses ever, even just to get a feel for what people's experience was with public transportation. So, Emily, are you looking for a job? I think we got a job for you as an editor at the Free Press. I don't know what the security's like, but we would love to have you there. Great questions. Please keep them coming. You can send them to us at mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com, and we will do our best to answer them, and maybe they will be the subject of a future column. And when I'm thinking about future columns, one of the ones I'm thinking about is the people who are going to run for Senate in Michigan, and this is a national phenomena. There are very few people who run for Senate in their states, in the United States, who have a long track record of living in that state, and it's becoming a real problem, and it raises the question, are you running for office from my state because you think you can win from my state, or because you really are invested and know and understand what the issues and the concerns are of those of us who live in our state? So great stuff, Emily. Please keep it coming. We really appreciate it. Mark, any other thoughts before we go? Other than a heartfelt longing for our friend Shawn Windsor.
I know. It's kind of sad that he's not here.
I know. It's who's going to go to the bathroom and then shake our hands afterwards.
I miss that guy.
Yeah. Even Devin brought sanitizer. So, folks, we really appreciate you being with us. We are very happy for our guest, Devin Scillian, for everything he's doing. Hopefully we'll read more of him in the Free Press. Hopefully he doesn't keep working so cheap, because I'm going to be out of a job before too long. I am planning to go and attend a very, very, very interesting court proceeding, and I'll be writing about that this Sunday in the Free Press, unless something bigger happens. And we appreciate it if you become a soulmate. We love it when you support our sponsors, when you call Luke, when you go to the cafe, tell him ML sent me. And we hope to see you there March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, and again on August 1st, and, various drunken nights in between. So, Mark, always great to have time together here in the dungeon. And to the rest of you, I'm going to say something you wish I'd said sooner. That's Cyrus. Take us out.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
I know what I want, and I know what I've got to do.
What's up?
You're making a big mistake. I mean, look at these people.
All of a sudden, you're taking an interest in what I do?
I know we're all pretty small in the big scheme of things, and I suppose the most you can hope for is to make some kind of difference. But what kind of difference have I made?
The Soul of Detroit.